Welcome back to Unstoppable Entrepreneurs, brought to you by New to the Street. We're here inside the legendary New York Stock Exchange. I'm Dustin Plantholt, host and co-producer. Today joining us is an unstoppable entrepreneur. His name is Nicholas Sansbury Smith. Let's welcome him now. Nick, welcome to Unstoppable.
Thank you so much for having me.
So I got to meet you electronically back in 2019. It was the first time I'd interviewed you. You were already a success then. So tell us about being an author. How does it make you an entrepreneur?
Well, storytelling is a business, and I think it took 2 books for me to realize that. But once I did, I started learning the business, and I realized I had to do much more than just write books. I had to create a business out of this, and that means learning how Amazon works, learning how book distribution works, learning how different formats work. It's not just paperbacks anymore. Back in 2010, I would say, is when ebooks really took off. And so then audio came around. So I realized that there was a lot of things I needed to adapt to. And um, one of the biggest things was audiobooks, which is now a big source of my revenue. And that's uh, probably the thing that a lot of authors should focus on now, I think, is trying to get into all these different formats and learning how to market them. Because, having a traditional publisher is great, but the author still has to market their own books a lot of the time. And I learned that a long time ago. I'm a hybrid author, so I self-publish. That's where I got my start. Then I started getting traditional publishing deals. I kind of go back and forth. I pick which format I kind of want. Sometimes I self-publish an ebook, or I go with a traditional publisher. I always use traditional publishers for my audiobooks. I've been very lucky with my narrators, so I'll mention here. My new book, Into the Storms, is a prequel to my New York Times bestselling Helldivers series. R.C. Bray narrates this series, and he's one of the best. His voice is legendary. I think a lot of listeners to the show will probably have heard of him if they've read sci-fi.
Well, full transparency to all my viewers out there. I am a big fan of your work.
Thank you.
It's interesting you talk about this. You and I discuss this process
Uh-huh.
that you go through. Talk about your process. The idea hits your head, but execution.
Yeah, the execution is probably the hardest part. And, I get questions all the time. Where do I get my ideas? Because I've written 55 books. I've been doing this full time about 12 years. Most of my ideas, there's never a shortage of ideas, but the best ideas, the ones that I can home in on when I'm laser focused, is when I'm exercising. I've done triathlons, Ironmans. That really prepped me for this career because it allowed me to be disciplined, and it allowed me to sit down and write for 4 hours, edit for 4 hours, and really focus on the quality of my work, and make sure that each book is better than the last. That's probably the biggest challenge I have over the marketing, over reaching an audience. It's making sure my books continue to be good. And I mean, I'm not here to say that I'm a literary genius, but I do take, um, I, I focus on character development. I focus on plot, and I try to do unique things. And when you first started reading my books, I was trying to introduce science into a genre, um, that did not have science to explain certain things. We're talking about zombies back in 2014 when they were so popular. I wrote a series called The Extinction Cycle. I utilized real science to explain how that was possible. And so that series took off, got a big publishing deal out of that. And The Extinction Cycle is now 12 books, and Helldivers is 14 books. So
It's incredible though, but you remain so humble. So you tend to give away a lot of credit to others. Why is that?
I definitely couldn't have done any of this without having help. When I first started writing, I was working at Homeland Security in Iowa. I was working on mitigating risks from disasters, and I kind of implemented that into my own writing. I got a lot of inspiration from that. Um, I was able to write a book that went viral, but I was able to get an agent because of that, and he opened some major doors that I wasn't able to open. David Fugate at Launch Books is my agent that opened those doors into traditional publishing. That series was called Orbs. It landed a book deal with Simon and Schuster. I was out here in New York for that in 2013. Then came the Extinction cycle, Helldivers, and I've been so fortunate to have really great narrators too. I mentioned R.C. Bray, but the Extinction cycle is narrated by Bronson Pinchot, and then some of my other books are narrated by Ray Porter, they're both fantastic. So, I mean, I'm able to write the story, but these narrators have brought the stories to life. And my agent has been able to get my books into formats that I wouldn't have access to if I was self publishing.
So it sounds like you've built this dream team around you, but it really is a team model.
It is. And that's where we go back to storytelling as a business. You have to treat it like that. And you don't necessarily need an agent to be successful, but agents are still, in a way, gatekeepers. They can help you with. I mean, I definitely think that you need an agent to get into certain media like film and yeah, TV. That's absolutely necessary. For audiobooks too, there's so many different publishers, different choices that authors have, and different ways to get your books and stories out there now. And we're seeing a huge shift in the market with AI now as well. So I kind of see a storm coming. I used to work in disaster mitigation for storms, and now I'm trying to mitigate risks to this storm and try to figure out how to continue to get my books out into different formats, reach new audiences, and
Is that
build that
scary
team.
though? Every time you come out with a new book, are you afraid?
I am nervous because each book, especially in a series, most books have a shelf life. It's a pretty short shelf life. So what I've done is I'm not afraid to try new things. I mentioned 3 series, but I've written 5 series. I have 2 new series coming out next year. I'm always trying to create new intellectual property and reach new audiences and tell new stories and build new teams too to help me get into different markets. I'm working on a new idea right now to bring my books into both digital and audio into foreign markets where I've never been able to access those. So I guess the fear for me, I turn into fuel and try to figure out ways to solve the problem on how I can reach new audiences. And if something's not working, I try to adapt and go back in and figure out why. And if it might be a story, for example, it might be a series that no longer is selling as well. So that's why I'm always working on 2 different stories at the same time for that exact.
You have one of the hardest roles of entrepreneurship because you have to continually be reminded by individuals around the world when they don't like something about you, when they were not a fan of your work. And
Right.
how does that not hurt your feelings?
I don't necessarily look at my reviews anymore as well. I do when a book comes out, but I don't sit there and look at my old reviews anymore. I know this is something a lot of authors face, and I realized 5 years ago that it wasn't healthy. So it's not really any the best the reason to look at a review is to try to learn from it. And when I read a review, if it's a negative review, I try to figure out what did I do wrong, what could I do better. And I've used a lot of reviews to help me. And some negative reviews have honestly been able to um, get me to change certain things in my stories. If it's legit and if it makes sense to me, I will take that into consideration. So
How do you know when it is legit? Because sometimes it seems to be impossible to make everybody happy. Because if
right,
it's kind of like in baseball, you might,
yeah.
change your position or change your swing, and then some other area of your bat doesn't work.
Um, well, first off, I would say that some reviews you just are not accurate. Some of them are driven by competitors. I mean, there's definitely is some of that on Amazon. I mean, all know that looking at Amazon reviews, some are, and it's not just Amazon. I mean, I have hundreds of thousands of reviews on Goodreads as well. But if there's something in a review that I've read that I think makes sense to me, then yeah, absolutely, I'll try to fix that. And for a future book, whether it's a character or a plot or something. And the thing is, you're never going to get everything right. You're never going to please everyone. You just have to focus on, it goes back to quality. I really I've tried to create a brand that's focused on quality. And I'm lucky because when I first started self-publishing, um, I learned very fast that quality is important. And then when I moved to traditional publishing, I worked with extraordinary editors at Simon Schuster, at Orbit, and they taught me a process that allowed me to produce a quality product that has very few typos, And now there's really no excuse for bad editing because you can run a manuscript through AI and it will tell you what typos there are within 10 seconds. So, but I will say, regardless of what technology's out there to edit a book, I still read through my books 4 or 5 times, 6 times before this hits the shelf to make sure it's the best story.
Is it ever finished when you're ready?
Um, can I turn my brain off? It's hard. It's especially when I go on binges and I'm writing for a couple days. I have a cabin in northern Minnesota I go up to, and for that whole week I'm laser focused on what I'm doing. And when I get home, I it's like detox, right? And I get back to reality. But I kind of do live in my worlds. And I love what I do. I enjoy it so much. And I think I also write what I like to read, which I think makes a big difference. Um,
Does it ever surprise you? And you read your book, I'm like, I wrote that.
after the editing process is over, I usually don't. I don't know why. I just have never. Um, and I think I'm too much of a perfectionist to go back over everything. I'll find something else that's wrong with it. I do listen to my audiobooks because I love my narrators. R.C. Bray has brought this series to life, and he mispronounces words on purpose because this series takes place 250 years in the future. So the idea would be that people have forgotten how to pronounce things like Chicago or Florida or New York. I mean, I know it sounds crazy, but think about it. 250 years is how long America has been around, right? Just about. So people living in the skies in this series 250 years from now, who knows how they would talk or what they would believe, or so he's brought literally changed the story in some ways on how he narrates it. It's phenomenal.
So Dan Pena said to me during an interview that you're never going to go higher than your greatest aspiration. What is Nicholas Sansbury Smith's greatest aspiration?
I love what I do. Being here is a dream of mine because I've gotten once I started making money, I paid off debt and I started getting into investments, properties, stocks. I really enjoy that aspect. So I think as far as aspirations go, I'd like to continue to create new businesses, but I also believe in do what you're good at. And I feel like what I'm best at is writing. So focusing businesses around that is probably what I'll continue to do. Um, I, d- Investing for me is something that I'm doing more for fun, but it's hard to say that investing isn't fun when you're in a bull market like now. But ask me again if we're in a bear market, and then I might tell you that it's not fun anymore. So I'll just stick to writing, which is what I hope to be able to do for the rest of my career. I hope that I'm able to do this. There's a lot of threats, like I was talking about the AI storm. I don't know what the next 5 to 10 years looks like, but you have to mitigate that. That's what I was doing for the state of Iowa. I was mitigating disasters, trying to keep people safe. And now I have to mitigate the risk of my business and try to adapt to that and plan for and honestly, there's a lot of pushback on AI right now on whether or not to use it in the creative world. It is a threat to creators. It can also be a tool. I talked about editing. I think it's a good tool to edit books. Um, but as far as writing goes, who knows how good it's going to get? Will it be able to write a book better than I can in a year from now? Maybe. So that's a scary thought.
Well, I hope that we'll get you back here soon where you can bring us back up to speed. And I'm confident that 10, 20, 30 years from now, your name will not just be synonymous with writing, but it will be with entrepreneurship and guiding others around the world how to take that idea and turn it into a true business. Thank you for joining us. Thanks to Unstoppable Entrepreneurs. We'll see you next time, everybody.